Today's video will explain the encapsulation metric of convenience. Hello, I'm James Helfrich. What are metrics and why do I need them to become a better programmer? This video will answer that question and as well as explain the encapsulation metric of convenience and show how it is a critical metric to help us design better classes. Convenience is the degree in which properties are presented to the client in a format which facilitates use in an application. Okay, there are two parts to this definition. First of all, properties are presented to the client. Convenience is exclusively concerning the public interfaces. We are not considering all the attributes or the private interfaces. This is just the methods that the client can see. Next, in a format which facilitates use in an application, it is necessary to evaluate the class in the context of the application. It cannot be evaluated in a vacuum. In other words, we must have a deep understanding of how this class is going to be used in the application. We want to make sure that our public methods are aligned with the needs of the application. It is easy to think of the software creation process as a one-person operation. You write all the code in an application. However, this is the exception and not the rule. And not only is it the exception, it almost never happens. In most scenarios, there is a client and a provider where you could be either at a given moment in time. So we're going to start with the provider. And this is the author of a function or class or component that is meant to be used as in another part of the application. When we're the provider, then we're going to be designing a class for the purpose of being used by someone else. And this is where convenience comes into play. Then there's the client, and this is the individual utilizing the provider's code to solve the problem. The client is responsible for integration. Now, our job as the provider is to make the client's job as easy as possible. And I want you to imagine for a moment that the client is your manager and you're providing code for the manager. If you make your manager's job difficult because your code is not convenient to use, then your manager is not going to think too highly of your code writing when it comes time to performance evaluation. So we always want to make our client's job as easy as possible. Now, there is no hard and fast methodology that one can follow to achieve seamless convenience with every class. However, there are a few considerations. First of all, ask the client many detailed questions. We need to have a very detailed understanding about how the class is going to be used in the application, what the application does, what kind of data it's going to use, what kind of operations it's going to expect. Next, we want to monitor how the class is used. After we've already written the code and handed over to the client, then after the client has provided the integration code, take a close look at how it's used. Are we requiring the client to do more work than necessary? Is there anything we could do to make the job a little bit easier? At that point in time, refactoring and reconsidering your public interfaces might be a good operation. And finally, try to be overly helpful. You're trying to assume as much of the client's job as possible so their work is easy as possible. In other words, we want complexity to go from the client's code into the provider's code, and we're going to hide that complexity in our class. Now, you can learn more about designing for convenience in the Designing for Convenience section of the Convenience chapter of the Software Design textbook.